Good morning. Um, I'm Peggy Thompson, and those of you who know me already know that I do not cook. Um, my house is pretty small, and I rarely entertain, so I have to admit that I was more than a little perplexed when I was asked to speak this morning about hospitality. As I was puzzling over why anyone would think that hospitality and my name belong together in the same sentence, it did finally occur to me that I was not alone at home. Besides the two dogs who are part of my family, sleeping in the next room was the young transgender woman from Honduras, whom I used to visit as part of the Friends of Orange County Detainees program. This is the room that used to be my office and now does double duty as her bedroom. Mind you, when I started doing this work with FOCD, I thought I had established very specific boundaries for myself, first and foremost of which was I was never going to bring anybody home with me. Okay, well, maybe just for a night or two if in an emergency, but that was it. So obviously, things change. Boundaries can evolve, move, and even disappear completely. As I got to know and care about Angelica, making the decision to welcome her into my home didn't seem like hospitality, more it just seemed like something I needed to do. Her short, young life had been exceedingly difficult. She was alone in the world and she needed help. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I thought I could offer it. And my fears for what would become of her if I didn't at least try overcame all of my very sensible reservations. And so today, Angelica is thriving in the first stable, loving home she's ever known. And over the course of the last few years, I've gained a family. I have a daughter, or maybe a granddaughter, more likely, that I never thought I would have. I smiled again as I remembered the extra mattress in my garage that is available to be dragged into my small living room when someone's released from immigration detention late at night and needs a place to stay for a day or two. And I thought about the dozens of men and women from El Salvador and Ghana, Somalia and Chechnya, Nepal, Bangladesh, and other places all over the world who have shared our home for a day or two or three on their long and arduous journey to a new life here in the United States. Before I started preparing this talk, my idea of hospitality had somehow been tied up in the Martha Stewart ideal of entertaining perfection, involving home-cooked gourmet meals, beautifully presented and served in elegant surroundings, along with perfectly appointed guest rooms with fresh flowers and lavender-scented sheets. These are skills which many of my friends here at Tapestry seem to excel at, but which were light years out of my own comfort zone. I only now have recognized that perhaps for those weary, disoriented, and overwhelmed immigrant travelers that I have hugged and welcomed into my home, even sleeping on a sofa or on a mattress on the floor and eating takeout chicken out of a plastic container probably looked and felt a lot like hospitality. So, how did this work become such an important part of my life? And how does this mesh with my values and my faith? My own personal faith has always been grounded in kindness and compassion, trying to live by the golden rule and the belief that what we do is much more important than what we say. Taking this one step further, it's an easy leap for me to believe that hospitality is just living out those principles. It's a way of putting that faith into action. Writing this for today, I was reminded that hospitality is really simply an opening of your heart to others, to seeing them, to seeing what you have that they might need, and the willingness to extend a hand and share what you have, even if it isn't really very much. Recently, I was visiting Binod, a young man from Nepal in immigration detention, for several months before he was finally released on bond. Binod had used his barbering skills to give haircuts to all the other men in the facility, and they would in turn gift him with packets of instant ramen noodles in payment. On the night that Binod was released, he gave his entire stash of about 30 packets of soup to another young friend from Nepal. Instead of keeping this windfall for himself, the recipient of this kindness used the soup packets to welcome new people arriving at the detention facility, saying that he wanted each of them to have something good to eat so they would feel good and feel welcomed. The poet Rumi wrote, "Open your hands if you want to be held." Opportunities to open our hands to others are all around us, and each of us will extend hospitality in ways that speak to our own hearts. These opportunities are everywhere, regardless of how much or how little we ourselves have. A packet of ramen noodles can be as powerful an example of hospitality as opening our doors to others. It's about putting our words into action and doing something. It's not about what or how much we give, it's about opening our hands. Because I know that having another person reach out for and latch onto that hand is what gives meaning and purpose to our lives. Thank you.
Good morning. I think you all know me by now. Nicki Renderer is my name. I've been coming here a couple years. I wanted to share a story with you today about how radical hospitality was extended to me and changed my life. Previously, when I spoke from this podium, I told you that I have struggled all my life with bipolar disorder. At this stage of my life, it's pretty well in hand, and I have most of the time looked like this pretty normal person that you see up here today. But about 40 years ago, that was not so much the case. And I had become part of a covenant church here in California based on a promise that Jesus was going to clear up this mess in my head. So I thought, okay, this is good. We'll try this. And I ended up going to Wheaton College in Illinois, where I was going to study Christian ministries and I was going to continue to be healed from this bipolar disorder. Well, that didn't work out so good, and things were not going well in Wheaton. I was alone. I didn't know anybody. I was in one of the most emotionally devastating states of my life, and I ended up in a psychiatric hospital. Now, I had been going to a covenant church there in Wheaton just because that's where only churches I knew. And when I got out of that psychiatric hospital, it was very apparent that most of the people in that church had no idea what to do with this crazy person in their midst, and in fact seemed, for the most part, to avoid me. However, the pastor, whose name was John Benson, and his wife Sandy, didn't ignore me. And they decided they were going to do something about the fact that I was alone all the time. And they came to me and they invited me to come every Wednesday night to their house for dinner. And they brought me into their family. They had 4 girls, Jennifer, aged 8, Sarah, aged 6, Laurel, aged 4, and Kristen, aged 2. So their house was a little chaotic, but every Wednesday for more than 3 years, until they moved away and took another pastorate, they had me to their house for dinner. They also had me to their house for Thanksgiving. They took me with them to church camp. They included me on family activities and picnics and outings, and they gave me an anchor. And to me, they didn't know me. You know, this was a big deal. This was radical hospitality. More often than not, Sandy would make Swedish meatballs. I can't see a Swedish meatball today without thinking about what they did for me and how that was. Eventually, I met Barb, and I wasn't alone, and Sandy and John, in spite of their fairly conservative Christian beliefs, were among the first to congratulate us when we got married. Sandy and John are still in touch with me, as are their girls. Girls are all grown women, and they have become part of my family. I don't think I'd be here today. I don't think I'd even approach a church of any sort if it hadn't been for Sandy and John showing me what real faith and real hospitality was about. Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Carrie, and I'm new here, and my family and I started attending Tapestry in the summer, and we are really grateful to have found you. As such, when Nicola asked me to speak today, I thought that this was a perfect opportunity to thank you for your hospitality towards us. I always imagined and prayed we'd find a community, a spiritual home for our whole family, but I could never have expected to find such a wonderful, open community as this. So thank you for your hospitality. In the short time we've been attending, we've been able to participate in some of the activities and events, and we're starting to feel more active and at home here. So it's been really fun. And learning more about this community, I've discovered that so many of you are current or former educators. So I learned that I'm in good company, and it makes sense. We share a desire to learn and to serve, which is part of Tapestry's covenant, after all. For the past 17 years, I have taught English at Troy High School in Fullerton. Each day, I have the opportunity to practice hospitality with about 180 students. I'm lucky in a lot of respects. I have my own classroom. I don't have to share it with any other teachers, and I don't have to travel from room to room. And so because of these circumstances, I've been able to create a sanctuary in my classroom. There's even a wide aisle that separates the two sections of desks. It actually looks a little bit like church. I joke with my students that room 421 is the Church of English. No other subjects before English. Now, I don't know about you, but high school for me was a tumultuous and kind of crazy time in life. It was a time of tremendous growth and learning and experimentation, but it was also volatile and difficult. And though I have a lot of memories that are vivid about my teachers, I can't really think of any of the classes as being particularly welcoming or home-like. They all looked the same. They had simple, deep rows of desks and chalkboards, and actually I kind of miss those chalkboards. Now we all have whiteboards. About 3 weeks before the beginning of the school year, I go back to campus and I start preparing to welcome my students. I plan my lessons, I make copies, and I go to some meetings, but I also prepare the space that they will learn in. And I prepare it with a spirit of hospitality to welcome them into a sacred, loving, accepting space. On the walls, I have hung my paintings. Okay, so confession, they're from those drink wine and paint places. But they're pretty good. My trees are pretty impressive. So, there are trinkets and tchotchkes and gifts from students past. I have framed photos of my family, and I have lamps all over the room to soften the fluorescent kind of lighting. I have battery candles because you can't have real ones. And I have fairy lights over my whiteboard. This year, I even bought a little pub table so that I could sit across from my students in conference about their writing. And twice a year at least, I host a proper British tea with real sugar cubes. And I serve my students tea. Some of them have never even had tea before, which is surprising. To give you some perspective, you should know a little bit about this young generation. For their entire lives, our country has been at war. Their whole lives. They have lived their entire lives with internet access and have a wealth and overstimulation of information, some of it helpful, but some of it anxiety-inducing. Most of them can't remember a life without cell phones or smartphones. They have witnessed and experienced tremendous economic instability and political volatility and cultural shift. They know they need to go to college, but it's more expensive and more competitive than ever. They've witnessed and experienced climate change and terrifying natural disasters. Most of them have at least in some way been affected by depression, suicide, cancer, or violence. Each day they enter the class, they come in with a lot of cargo, and some of it is pretty heavy, especially when you think of all those details. Each day I need them to trust me, to take intellectual risks, and to stretch and grow as people. In order to do this, I need to create a hospitable environment where they can feel safe and comfortable. Research tells us that we learn best when we feel safe and comfortable, when hospitality has been extended to us. I try to remember that for some of my students, though I hope not many, I might be the only person to smile at them that day. I might be the only source of kindness and hospitality that they encounter. So it's with that awareness that I welcome them into a safe environment, a soft place to land for 57 minutes of their day where we can be human together. We also work really hard. We navigate the choppy waters of Jane Eyre and Hamlet, The Great Gatsby, Death of a Salesman. I'm sure you remember them, yeah? And I have high expectations. I expect them to know the difference between motifs and themes, how to communicate sophisticated ideas, how to make their subjects and verbs agree, and how to use a semicolon elegantly for the love of all that's holy. And as for me, I have to read and grade their work. It isn't always easy to welcome in each student, and I would be lying to you if I told you that I feel an immediate, intimate connection and kindred with all of my students. There are students I struggle to extend hospitality towards, and I struggle to connect with all of them. But even in welcoming in those who challenge me, I stretch and grow as a person too. And I expect them to be hospitable to me, to open their hearts and minds, to trust me, to let me be vulnerable with them, to let me share with them what I've learned. And if we all do our job, we learn equally from each other by the end of the year. I believe that welcoming my students in, not just in my classroom, but into my heart, makes the world a better place. I hope and believe that my hospitality extends well beyond the limitations of that classroom with 180 students for 57 minutes a day for over 180 days a year. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to host, in ways big or small, greater compassion for humanity.